Good afternoon, everyone. We are pleased to have you join us as we continue our series of virtual town halls hosted by Digital Promises League of Innovative Schools. Today, our focus is on adaptive learning models for supporting in-school and remote learning. The unprecedented, massive, and immediate transition to remote learning as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic required many school districts to implement digital learning without the time to research and plan. The need to source and deploy digital tools, train teachers, and onboard students to new ways of accessing learning posed particularly significant challenges for school districts who had not implemented digital learning at a systems level. Member districts within the League of Innovative Schools have pioneered, scaled, and benefited from creating adaptive learning models that sustained through this unprecedented transition and have strategies, solutions, and lessons learned to share as school districts across the country prepare for school year 2021. I am Kimberly Smith, Executive Director of the League of Innovative Schools, with my co-host, Dwayne McClary, who's Director of the League. We are joined today by League Superintendents Pat Deklotz of Kettle Moraine School District in Wisconsin, Joel Coleman of Utah School for the Deaf and Blind in Utah, and Mike Nagler of Mineola Union Free School District in New York. Welcome to our guests.
Thank you for having us.
All righty. Hello, Mike. Hello, Joel.
Oh, it's great to be with you.
All right. We're going to start. Dwayne's going to review the format for the session, and then we'll dive into the questions. Dwayne.
Hi, everyone. For the format of the sessions, we will begin with a set of questions and transition to a Q&A for the last 20 minutes. We invite you to type your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen of the webinar, and we look forward to hearing from you guys soon.
All right. Thanks, Dwayne. All right, let's get started. Pat, I'm going to start with you. So your district is recognized as a national leader in designing and implementing a competency-based learning model across grade levels. Can you provide us with an overview of your competency-based learning approach and also discuss how the systems you've created have supported teaching and learning through COVID-19?
Sure, happy to do my best in answering that. I would just say that our move to competency-based education or competency-based learning really prepared us well to make the transition to virtual when seat-based learning was really out the window. When a virtual environment, it's very difficult to really quantify the quality of seat time, so to speak. So looking at artifacts and evidence that support the understanding that the students have mastered the concept or the learning target that they're able to demonstrate through these submissions of evidence that they are ready to move on is part of what we do in many of our environments throughout the year. So transitioning to the virtual environment was fairly seamless for those environments. Those that were not yet in a competency-based move had heard from their colleagues, had friends in those environments, and were able to collaborate with them and build understanding of what that means. And so whether it was kindergartners submitting seesaw videos that demonstrated their reading of a book to a sibling or a parent, or all the way up to calculus and submitting evidence of the mastery, that's really the way that we're operating right now.
Great, thank you, Pat. Mike, so this year you were selected as a finalist for AASA Superintendent of the Year, due in part to your leadership. Congratulations in designing innovative learning models. I'd love for you to talk about your approach to adaptive learning in Mineola and how live instruction and student connection have complemented your digital learning through COVID-19.
Yeah, I think similarly to what Pat just described, that evidence of learning, we do something called AKA, an application of knowledge assessment. So we've rebuilt our curriculum to make it a digital curriculum around essential questions. And we encourage kids to have choice in how they demonstrate their knowledge and demonstrate their understanding of deep concepts. So all of that enabled us when we went virtual to already have so many structures in place that it was very easy to shift to a distance learning model. And we've been dabbling with badge books and different, we eliminated our report cards in our younger grades. We've integrated curriculum. The badges kind of are a different way to look at assessments for our youngest learners. So I'm very fortunate to have a lot of rock star teachers, and I think I get the biggest charge when I see my pre-K teachers do virtual learning live with 4-year-olds. I actually tried it, and I will not do that again. It's a challenge, but we had so many systems in place before having to move to distance learning that it really was a flick of a switch for us. And I would encourage everyone to, it's a trying time, it's a difficult time, but look at the optimism, go into it with optimism and a positive for what can be done and how you can enhance learning for kids when you come back.
Great, thanks, Mike. Joel, so your district is lauded for your leadership in providing K-12 education statewide, in person, at a distance for students who are blind and deaf. Can you discuss the structures and tools that you have put in place at the core of your model with a focus on how you extended your support for families?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an honor to be here with Pat and with Michael and Thomas. Thanks for inviting me today, by the way. We were fortunate in a way because we're set up to do special things in the first place. And so 7 years ago when I came on board, I actually didn't have a special ed background, but when I started learning a lot more about IDEA, I thought, well, this is just the new ways of 21st century learning. We just use different vocabulary in special ed world and in regular ed world. And so it was easy for us to start capitalizing on that because most of our teachers are special educators. When we started talking about personalization, it led them to saying, well, we can't do this or that. And I said, well, what if you could? How would it look? And so we had the tools just starting to develop at that time. And of course, over the last few years with a lot more robust clip as we go along. And so we had implementing an LMS. We use different LMSs for the elementary kids, and for the older kids, we use Canvas, and in elementary we use Seesaw. But it was really the mindset, just allowing the teachers to throw off the shackles and say, what are we doing as grown-ups that are barriers to the kids getting where we hope they'll get? And so we actually did a survey of parents. We have people in the highly urbanized area where Salt Lake City and the other main cities are. We've got families all the way out in the Four Corners area on the Navajo reservation and other places like that are pretty rural. And so we went out and tried to sort of problem solve. What do they need? How can we get internet to them? Or, it was a lot more than just devices. And over time, we slowly allowed our professionals to think differently and to develop without the traditional kind of barriers. And now they've started getting to a point where they're excited to teach others. And I would say that was the most important thing for people to remember is be patient with your people, but also give them permission to try things and fail and to be their own professionals. We even tell our teachers, if you want to go train another school, or if you get called in out of state and you go do that, we'll count that as work time. We'll provide a sub for your classes. And that way they really take ownership and they don't feel like they're just trapped in their own classroom experimenting on their own, but they get to collaborate with others. So that's what I would say, that there's the physical side, but there's also the mindset side where you just throw off the shackles and let them go.
Great. Appreciate the underscore of mindset. That's helpful. This is a question for any of you to answer. So all of you have been members of the league for at least a few years and began the process of developing your models and systems a few years ago. Can you talk about how you got started and some of the lessons learned that can help others? Who'd like to kick this off?
I'll jump in first.
All right.
Maybe I would think we might have been at it the longest time. We've been going at this since 2005. So we go slow to go fast, and we start small. We started our work with pilots and then individual charter schools that are instrumentalities of our district. So we gave parents and students an option to opt into learning rather than working to fight, as we did in this last, March, flipping an entire district to virtual on a dime is very challenging if you haven't had people doing that work, leading that work, putting systems in place, and really working to scale to fidelity that throughout a district. So I would not want anyone on the call to think that this is simple or like flipping a light switch. I love the thought of making sure you're patient with your teachers. You also have to be patient with your parents and with your students, because this is a mind shift for everyone. The fact that we have been doing it for a long time, we have built-in coaches, that helped our teachers, certainly, but it wasn't without some challenges or difficulties. So I would say start, whatever you do, start and work with the willing, and then bring along those. Usually it's a fear that keeps people from embracing it. And as Mike mentioned, this is a unique time where when people are given that opportunity, it's like jumping into the deep end of the pool. You have to learn how to swim. And people are, my staff are really embracing that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Great,
You're
thank
right
you.
you're right about rolling it out slowly. When we started, even just going to an LMS, we gave them Canvas the first year and said, we're not going to tell you to do anything with it except play around, get to know it, learn what you can. And then we gave them a little assignment the second year. We previously decided we're going to take 3 years to roll this out. And the second year, all we told them to do is put in your pacing guide, put in your 180-day plan, and then you can fill in materials later. And they kind of did that on their own. So the patience really paid off. And when it was time, we didn't actually know it. We hadn't been tested on complete remote learning, right? But when it happened, the teachers were already there. And sometimes what you said, Pat, about the fear, I told this to a few of you the other day, but I was trying to help my mom learn how to use an iPad about 1.5 years ago. And she's like, I just don't think I'll ever learn this. And I said, Mom, we've got blind preschoolers that use iPads. You can do it. I promise you.
Mm-hmm.
And because they are such unique needs, we just don't have a mindset that we can't do something. Sometimes we say we just haven't figured it out yet, but there's going to be a way that this child can learn like anybody else.
Yeah, I would add that I'm a little different. I prefer to jump into the deep end than go slow, but and I can do that now after 10 years of doing this because my teachers and my staff are just used to it. But I think the most critical thing that some people get off on the wrong track is they worry about a device, or they worry about how they're going to use the technology, instead of worrying about the lessons, the planning, the engagement piece for kids. So the LMS, the learning management system, is critical as a first step to how are you going to get things from a teacher to a kid back. How do you establish a grade book? How do you develop a digital curriculum? You don't have to do it on your own. There's tons of OER out there that you can borrow. But those first steps are critical to build a system that's going to work into the future. And your LMS needs to grow with you and change with you on how your teachers embrace it. So whether it's slow or fast, they still need the ability to, you let your high flyers go and the system is going to carry them. And the ones that need help, how you're going to support them within the system to get the work done. So I think that's step one if you're just beginning this journey on how to do it.
Great, thank you. There was a question about some more specificity on the starting point. I'm just going to ask, did you all develop district-wide plans for the work? Did you decide to pilot? I mean, Pat, you mentioned start small. Did you pilot with specific schools? Can you talk a little bit more about the actual steps you took?
Sure, and we did start, we piloted with what we thought would be a small charter school, and then we scaled to the small charter school. And then we learned from that to be able to build the expectations for the district, because the board's commitment was very firm. We want personalized learning for all, and that we support through digital tools. It's not that the getting a device means personalized learning. That's not true at all. Devices are tools, just like an LMS is a tool. And those are the things that help support that interaction of the teacher and the student, and allows teachers to group kids in small groups, etc. One of the things that I think is really important, a more specific detail, is we developed a continuum, our teachers developed a continuum of what does personalized learning look like, and what's the continuum that a teacher might go through to see the progress in these various components of personalized learning. That's available on our website. I can put the link in when I'm not talking. But I think one of the things that's helped us in this COVID period is setting clear but reachable goals for people when they are not necessarily that well versed in being a virtual instructor. So, you know, setting some real clear goals about artifacts, or the number of visual interactions that a teacher needs to engage in, the type of communication that we're expecting them to have with a student, especially if you've got a reluctant learner, a disengaged learner. How are we reaching out? We've got a whole protocol of how do we reach out to that student and then to that family to try to re-engage them and address whatever challenges they might be having that's keeping them from being a participant in the learning. So, you know, I think being specific, asking for feedback. That's one of the things that we did also, right, was make sure that teachers knew we wanted to get the feedback from them about what were their challenges. So we have a learning continuum in our district for all schools, that students, whether you're a fourth grader in this school or another school, this is kind of, you're on a continuum from kindergarten through certainly middle school, and then as you get into the high school, you have more differentiation with the learning targets of those student elected choices.
We weren't as organized when we started it out. We didn't develop a plan first. What we did know is kind of what we wanted it to look like at the end, but not for sure which tools or which paths we would use to get there. So we specifically, I love the question, can you be more specific about where to start?
Yeah.
We specifically started by just starting conversations with our teachers, with our staff, and we knew darn well it could not be a top-down effort. It had to be organic from the bottom, but they weren't going to do it on their own. So it took a little bit of both, and we came together over time, but we did keep consistent pressure on them to give us feedback. We said, we're going to give you some ideas, we're going to throw it out there, but the day's going to come when you won't be able to be the same kind of teacher you've already been. So the sooner you get there, the better it will be for the students. And what that did is it just got them buy-in first before we started laying things out. And as we started listening to those conversations, it became very clear what went into our eventual plan, which was, you know, we had to outreach to these rural areas. And we first did that with sign language, with interpreters on devices who were in our urban areas, and they were doing that. And then we realized, you know what, we can teach Braille to blind children the same way with an aid on the other end. And then we just started thinking of different things, but they weren't all generated from us at the superintendency level. They came, and as we started celebrating the people in the trenches who were being creative, others caught on, and we quickly identified those who were resistant, and it turned out to be fewer than we thought. So we got to take a little more time with them, but I wish I was as organized as you were, Pat, with a plan and all that. We
Organized
just sort of,
cake.
yeah, it's there. I know it's never pretty, but we did kind of do both at the same time. We developed a plan, but letting them know they were part of that development process. And eventually it got to a critical mass where it started taking on a life of its own and it became the culture.
I think some of it also is, what problem are you trying to solve? You have to be, because you could chase your tail a lot trying to do something with technology. For us, it was standards-based grading. We spent all this time making a beautiful report card, and then when it came time for teachers to fill it out, where is the evidence behind it to say this child was at a specific point? So that really generated a lot of work on our part to tagging materials to a standard and being able to generate standard-based portfolios for kids and really show actual work in a specific standard. And that has developed over 7-8 years for us with a startup LMS that really built out a system for us. But I think when you're looking to solve a problem that teachers have, they're very receptive to doing the work because it makes their life easier. When you solve a problem they don't want you to deal with, you get resistance and you don't get the rollout the way you want. So that whole collaboration with your staff and teachers is critical to really the success or failure of whatever initiative you're doing, especially with technology. People will live with the pains of technology when they see the value in the work.
Great, thank you. So all three of you are closing out a school year and planning for school year 2021. Can you talk a little bit about how you're addressing kind of model shifting in your own district between hybrid models in school and at home, staggered days, distance learning, and how your tools and systems are supporting that transition and how you're thinking about planning for the fall? Pat, we'll go back to you to start.
Well, and I would say the tools and systems that we're using now will be the tools and systems we use in the fall, whether we're face-to-face or virtual. So one of the things I would strongly advise is stick with what you know and use it well. Don't flip from tool to tool to tool, and don't have, this is challenging for parents when they have children at multiple grade levels to be able to navigate all these differences. The more we can keep it the same for them, the easier it'll be for them to help support their student in their learning. We are right now in the process of trying to think of that nimbleness. How do we ensure that we're able to go from one environment to another? We fully expect that we will have to flip back and forth throughout the year, and we also expect we're going to have a certain percentage of parents who have students that they want to continue them to learn in a virtual learning because of maybe they're medically fragile, maybe they are emotionally fragile, they have a fear of COVID-19. There are any number of reasons. Maybe they're living with elderly grandparents or a parent who's going through cancer treatments, and there's just too many unknowns, and kids are as individuals as the families they come from. So being responsive to all of that means we have to think deliberately about how we organize our day, certainly how we give teachers time to learn and plan and collaborate amidst this. The idea of prep time becomes very different because you're going to have students in class, maybe it's half the class, maybe it's the full class, spaced in a different learning environment with some students still at home. So we are engaging in that planning, and we are looking at it. Draft 1 we'll share in June internally. Draft 2, incorporating all the feedback and questions, will be shared in early July with a bigger panel of teacher critics and parent critics to give us feedback. Share that with our board in July, share out another rollout in August, knowing that what we learn from our state or our county health officials will be dictating what we need to respond to. So collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. Can't say it enough. I'm on state calls, county calls all the time, trying to learn from each other.
Great, thanks, Pat. Before we go to Joel and Mike on the question, Dwayne, you want to kind of plug our QA?
Yes. All right, audience members, please feel free, and we welcome you to ask your questions in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. You can go ahead and start putting them in, because we're going to be transitioning to the town hall version of to ask your questions to the panel very shortly.
All righty, thank you much. So Joel, you want to talk a little bit about how you're thinking about going into the school year here?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference now is that we have 100% buy-in from the parents on even competency-based things. No matter how much we thought we had done, there were still some remnants left over of old ways of thinking. And so, for example, we've been challenging our schools to, why are you having parent-teacher conferences twice a year and getting a compensatory day for that? You should be communicating with parents all the time. It should be a partnership. They shouldn't be sending their kids away to school to be schooled and then home as if they're two separate things. Learning is anytime, anywhere, in any place. And, you know, competencies are what matters, not compliance with all of the trappings of school. And so that actually was kind of the final mindset thing that we needed to accomplish. And that was the biggest silver lining for us during this time. I don't think our models will shift significantly in other ways, because we already have fairly small classes. So the social distancing and the safety issues won't be a problem. Also in Utah, we've been fortunate that we have very, very low numbers anyway. And so there's a lot of getting back to normal going on as it is. So for us, it's just going to be a little bit of business as usual again, but with a higher awareness of this bold new frontier and the things that matter most in learning. The parents, the teachers, and the children will all be on the same page completely now.
Great, thank you. Mike, thoughts?
It's kind of the opposite. So New York is the epicenter. So it's it's a little touchier here. I think what Pat said about being cognizant that some parents don't want to send their kids back. Some adults aren't going to be medically able to come back. You have to do some kind of social distancing. So, you know, but how are we going to make it manageable for parents? You know, I'm in favor of bringing everyone back. I'm not crazy about the alternate day, but kind of do distance learning in the building. So you could separate your kids out and alternate who gets distance learning, who gets live instruction, and can we do a live feed of a teacher no matter where their kid is. So if they're home, they're in the building in an auditorium, they're in the classroom, they're wherever, and vice versa for an adult. So I think all the technologies are there to do that. And it's not as heavy of a lift as what we're doing now. So I think some of the planning has to be the structural piece, as Pat mentioned, to what does a day look like? How can we replicate as close of a normal day as possible and do that virtually or in person and be able to flip-flop it so kids get an equal number of the experience. And the more I discuss it with people, the more promise I think it has. There'll be a ton of roadblocks in the way, I'm sure, but it's plausible to open school, stay distant, and still get the live and hybrid instruction, and still like go to Chem Lab and do an experiment. So I'm hopeful that's the direction we go to, because I really want to open school in September. I think it's important for kids to be in school. And as well as we do this, it's not school, so we need to really always keep that at the forefront of our planning.
Great, thank you. Another question for the three of you to think about is, where have challenges arisen, you know, over the years with the systems that you have designed and created, and how have you navigated those challenges? And maybe just pick one that has kind of rises to the top, but Let's see, Pat, we're going around the circle. You want to go
Sure.
around again?
Well, yeah, sure. I would say one of the significant challenges is helping parents to understand the why of what we're doing.
You stole my
And
answer.
that's why I went first. Yeah, I mean, I think it's parents all have a mental model of what school was, and either they were successful or they weren't successful, but they know what they went through. And so to build a different understanding and why it's important to change is a critically and the other thing I would say is that process never ends, because we always get new parents in. You're always cycling a new cohort through. So that's a constant effort to communicate and respect the questions that they have, to build an understanding without becoming defensive or without shortcutting it so that they don't feel heard. I think that's a really important piece. One of the things we're looking at right now with the fall is building much more robust both website and tools, video tools for parents to kind of explain some of the whys and navigate. How do they get, why are we using this tool? How do you navigate it? What does that mean? How are you communicating some of the expectations? And I think the more we can be proactive in trying to anticipate their questions and answer them as respectfully as we can, the better off it is to build that alliance, because that's really when kids succeed, when parents and teachers are collaborating. Student success soars.
Great. Go ahead, Joel.
Well, what was, I lost my thought there. What was your question again?
You want to go to Mike and come back? This one is about
Oh,
challenge.
no. I remember what I was going to say. I totally remember now. It's just a second. I must be getting old.
Don't take my second answer.
No, with us, it was less about helping the parents understand the why, because they were just grateful to have resources like us for their children. But with us, it was a big push on helping policymakers understand the why, because those were the constraints that we faced more than anything. And in our state, we have, of course, the legislature that makes the law, and then the State Board of Education creates administrative rules to implement that in the system. And so we had to work very closely with both the State Board of Education and legislators at the same time to help them understand the new ways of thinking. And you can't just do it in a vacuum. You really need their support, because sometimes they would require you to do things that were actually antithetical to where we were trying to go, because they were based on outdated models of thinking. And so that's what it was that slipped my mind. I wanted to share that.
No worries. Great. Mike?
Yeah, I would reiterate what Pat said so eloquently about the why and keeping that conversation going. And I'm going to state the obvious that, Digital Promises, #ConnectKids now is, it's critical that we do something about connectivity for kids.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really ridiculous at this point that we have children that don't have access, and we keep harping on the advantages to access, and we're not providing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it surprised me this year, because I've been doing this for a long time, and we've had hotspots, and we've provided connectivity to families really for years. And when 40 of my families showed up when we were cut off, as it completely surprised me. I thought we had this licked, and we didn't. And I don't know if it was a pride thing, or it was, I just went to the library and I got my internet there. I didn't need your help. But when it was gone, we had this need. But more importantly, the providers are providing the connectivity right now. So I got those 40 families hooked up to our, Cablevision. Why didn't they do that before?
Mm.
And they're able to do it. Why can't they do it after the fact when we need them to do it? I mean, it's really, it angers me that when the need was there, they were able to provide it. But when I needed it before we shut down, we couldn't do it.
Mhm.
And that's shameful. And that's a problem that we need to really band together and fix. If anything good comes from that, if we can achieve that, it would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you all. I'm going to bring Dwayne back in. Hello, Dwayne.
Hey, hey.
We got some questions from the folks watching. What you got?
Yes, I have a question from Fran. Could you guys please discuss the journey for teachers and parents switching from grades to the mastery scale or rubrics? And I'll start with Pat. Go with you again, and you can take the question answer for all of them.
Sure. I saw that question in the chat or the box, and I was like, wow, yeah, I forgot all about that. Because we've been on the journey for a long time. And, you know, certainly we started with just building an understanding among our teachers of the why behind balanced assessments. Like, why would you move away from giving a 0? Why is it important that students have the ability to retake and continue to work to demonstrate the evidence that we need to have to show competency or mastery, right? So moving to rubrics was an essential part of that. And we laid a lot of groundwork in building an understanding of those rubrics, and then moving to more of that standards-based and ability to reassess. We still use final letter grades in our district on high school transcripts. It's simply not a battle we need to fight, right? We do have a school that's participating with mastery transcripts and trying to redefine what a transcript could look like. But again, that's something we need to build a lot of awareness and understanding around at the higher education level, within the parent community, within the business community. So big issues there. But, you know, starting with that understanding of balanced assessment, and it's not about trying to catch kids making mistakes. It's about how do we engage them in the learning so that they understand why they need to demonstrate the competency so that they can continue to progress. It's about us enabling them, like you said, Joel, taking away the barriers that prevent learning from happening.
Well, we had a lot easier time with our elementary teachers moving away from the traditional grading than we did with our secondary teachers. Our secondary teachers tended to want to use grading as behavioral control more than to focus on learning. And so we kind of took baby steps too. And then it wasn't a process where we just implemented the new policy and said, do it, because they just couldn't think differently at first. And then when we had experiences, we would share them. So for example, we had one where one of our principals came in and said, so-and-so is just not going to graduate. He's not going to get credit for this course and he needs it for graduation. And we said, really? So we're going to send this kid out into the world because he was short one course as a non-graduate. Are you kidding me? We will do everything we can to get him across that line. And she said, well, what am I supposed to do? I said, whatever it takes. It doesn't, this is about the kid, not about the grade or whatever. And I said, now don't get me wrong. We're not just going to give them the grade. They need to do the learning. But you got 3 weeks left until graduation day. The kid can learn this material in 3 weeks. And so she just assigned him a special tutor, like a partner, an adult partner that just worked with that child and got him there. And she came back and said, okay, now I get it. Before we've just gone, oh, well, you didn't do it. And so it really is a shift in the way the synapses fire, I think. But once they have seen it, they've told us, oh, I can't unsee this whole competency-based thing and all that. So yeah, we'll convert things back to grades so they can go on to higher ed and so forth. But I could never teach the old way again. So it's like, that's the switch that really flips and the light bulb goes on when they get it.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just happy to see it's not different state by state. So I'm really excited about the work we're doing with our badge books in our younger grades. So we have this, I have this saying, kids need to know what they don't know. And it has to be very clear to them what they're deliberately practicing as part of our growth mindset initiative to get better at something. So we're transitioning for 2021 to learner pathways. We're establishing micro-credential badges within a standard. We're eliminating 1, 2, 3, 4. We're not doing that anymore. And children have to meet specific criteria for each micro badge. And when you complete all your micro badges, you're proficient in that standard, you get a mastery badge. And then we build enrichment badges after that. So achieving beyond, one of our challenges is parents want their kids to be a 4 in the first trimester when it's a year-end, it's a year-end goal. And trying to explain that is like, banging your head against a wall. So our notion here is that the micro badges are very discrete and you don't have to do them consecutively. You can earn them however you master it and meet the criteria for it. And it changes our conversation with children and with parents about what they know, what they understand, and what they need to continue to work on within that standard. We're not doing that for every standard. There are our anchor standards. We're going to really take a deep dive in there. And then there are just badges that kids meet. And the other piece that we adopted as part of our growth mindset is these badge books are little stickers, and they're all free online. If you want to go look on my website, they're all available. We give neuron stickers. So when kids aren't getting that criteria, they just can't get that badge, we credit them for working toward it by growing neurons. So a lot of this is age appropriate. So especially with our younger learners, what we expect kids to do in kindergarten when they're 5 is unrealistic for certain children. So how do we build something that recognizes that and encourages kids to fail, to make the mistakes, to keep trying, to plot ahead and work at their pace till they master that standard. So that and it's been a lot of fun. It really, and it's been a lot of fun, these discussions I'm having with teachers about building this system. And I think it's going to be really cool because these children have badges. They don't know anything, that we're rolling it through the grades. So this is how they've been assessed since they were in pre-K, and they're going into grade 2 next year. So it's been really an interesting experiment for us.
Awesome. One other question from Carolyn. She asked, teachers constantly complain that the online learning requires of them is flat as before. So what are you doing to successfully engage students?
Yeah, I thought that was a great question. And one of the things that I would say has become very evident in my district, we've always had a certain number of disengaged students that we struggle to engage. And now that it's virtual, we'll probably see them more clearly, because it's not like they're taking up a spot in a classroom. They're just gone. So how do we engage them? There's a couple of things that I think are really important. And one of the things that we did was to set that expectation that every teacher needs to have a visual interaction with every student at a minimum weekly. Now, there are some that are doing it much more regularly, but also then giving our teachers an opportunity. We take a Monday and it's PD day and it's collaboration day. So engaging teachers in learning how to use Google Meets or Google Classroom or Hangout, how do you set up small rooms for small group discussion and then bring them back together to collaborate. Some of the nuances of the tech tools that we have, I don't know that it's realistic to expect that teachers develop an understanding of all of those tools by themselves, but put them in a group, even virtually, learning from each other, and it really opens up a lot of exciting possibilities. I think, and Mike, you were mentioning this on another day, but the need for social emotional support again has become so vividly apparent in this virtual learning environment. Our kids hunger to see their teacher. They hunger to have conversations with their peers. And even having a classroom meeting where you're not talking academics, you're talking people, is something that engages students. And they'll come back because they want to see their friends again, right? And so, you know, it's engaging means you're seeing the person. And the academics can follow, but if you don't see the person, the academics are going to be flat.
Here, here.
So I noticed interesting on this, my own son, who's 14, my youngest, he's got kind of long hair, and I don't realize that his earbuds are in sometimes. So we'll be in the room and interacting, and then he'll start talking off topic totally. And I didn't realize he's plugged in and wired to his 4 best buddies all day long on the phone. They're wandering around multitasking and hanging out while they're learning or doing chores or whatever. It's just, you're right about the social emotional needs. They've become so clear. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I would add that you know, we should see this as a wonderful opportunity to do things that we don't normally do. So when you design lessons and you are trying to engage kids, you should do things you don't normally do, like provide kids with choice of an assignment, or do different kinds of group work, or do some project-based learning that you never wanted to experiment with because you had an assessment you were worried about. Well, those assessments are gone now. So what's your excuse now? So all these things that, you know, I liken it to, educators are constantly grappling what they want to do and what they have to do, whatever that perception is. You know, I have to teach to a test, or I have to follow this rule. But there's all these things that you want to do that you don't. Well, here's your perfect opportunity to do all those things you want to do. There's no excuse not to. And you know, Joel's work is a testament to kids with IEPs, because I keep hearing this, that we can't meet IEP goals and kids with disabilities can't do this. That's not true. I mean, you just have to be creative in how you deliver it. And I'm a big proponent. We went live instruction the second day. I mean, we need to put eyes on kids. And that, if you're trying to do distance learning with making a video and sending it through Google Classroom and then grading that video, kids are not going to be engaged. Yeah, you know, it shouldn't be a secret that's just not going to happen. So I think you know, we have to encourage our teachers to do things differently and use this as this grand experiment for, well, how can I make my teaching and learning better? And here's the challenge to do it.
We've
Well,
had teachers,
building on that, oh, go ahead, Joel.
well, we've had teachers come up with things we haven't even thought about. We said, like I found out that one of my teachers was visiting the homes of her kids and dropping off manipulatives and supplies so that their online experience could be less online and more, they were actually moving, and with the little kids, it was more important than even the bigger kids, but they all need it. So you're right. I realized, and the question was really good. It seems flat, and it does at first, but anytime we can encourage those educators just to not give up, keep going. Your students will key off of that. They'll develop the same grit and resilience, but also the teachers will develop too. We're not, as grown-ups, we're not too old to learn new tricks, and they will help each other with that shared professional learning in their learning communities and so forth. And it happens. It's just not instant for those who haven't had the experience yet.
One of the benefits that we found with trying to engage some of the more reluctant learners, all of our paraeducators were kept on. They were not furloughed, and they monitor some of the feedback that we get from our virtual tools, so they can reach out and grab kids and engage them and really dig in deeper than perhaps the teacher might have the ability to do. Our guidance counselors, you know, they're having, and our principals, they'll hold lunch bunches and invite kids in just to let's talk over lunch, right? So trying to create opportunities for connections that are not just focused around a subject area, I think is a big part of helping to keep kids engaged in doing, letting them talk, you know, the seesaw videos that the elementary kids make, or the group presentations that some of the high school kids have put together, really speak about higher than a rubric would expect. And they're trying to connect and teach their friends, their colleagues, and they're trying to show off for their teachers. They like to please.
One of the last things I'll mention real quick is I asked our communications director to create a section in what we call the Friday letter that goes out to everyone. And so she's having them share, because we're across the state. You're not all on one campus or two. And so we share and celebrate creative ideas and successes so the other teachers internally can see that and key off of it themselves. We've heard that that's been helpful in some ways too.
All right. So Kim, I think I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, we've got about 2 or 3 minutes, so we're gonna do a quick round robin. So without naming specific tools, can you just talk a little bit about the types of tools? You've mentioned LMSs. Are there other digital tools you just want to put out there that you would recommend folks to take a look at in terms of the types of tools you're using?
Yeah, I would say that just remember that apps are not curriculum and vice versa. So you should think about what you're doing in digital curriculum and then how you complement it with apps. And any app that has a dashboard that your teachers can follow along student progress is critical to how you think and plan.
Great, thanks. Other thoughts?
One tool that we found, I will name it specifically, it's a plugin for Canvas called Go React. It was developed for regular kids, but our deaf kids use it, and it's video, but it's asynchronous. So even if you're not live, you can go back and forth in the middle of assignments and other places. It's a tremendous tool. That's been a great help for us.
Thanks. Pat, anything to recommend there?
Well, I would say that we have over the years moved to many online textbooks type of resources. So I think my caution would be make that a part of your regular work. Don't do that for virtual learning only. And again, don't try to adopt a whole bunch of little tools or even apps that are brand new. Like, use what the kids know, use what the teachers know, and build on that. Through the LMS, you can make resources. There's so many resources available that, you know, keeping it organized for kids, keeping a simple way for parents to know how to navigate, but those are just really important steps.
Yeah, and I'll give a shout out to, we have a ton of free resources on my webpage, mineola.k12.ny.us, from videos to integrated curriculum, to our badge books, to a K2 website loaded with ideas for distance learning for pre-K to 2. So proud to share those, and would happy to answer any questions if you had them.
All righty, we have reached the end of our time here. So I want to thank all three of you, Pat, Joel, and Mike, for being pioneers around adaptive learning models and sharing your thoughts with us today. Next week, everyone, join us for our final town hall of the school year, a conversation on technology, sustainability, and planning for school year 2021 re-entry on Wednesday, June 3rd at 4 p.m. Eastern. Registration opens tomorrow. You will receive an email with a recording of today's session and a link to register. So thanks to the three of you. Be well, and we'll see everyone next time.
You too. My pleasure.
Take care.
Bye.